The sacred fire should have smelled like cedar and blessing. Instead, it smelled like scorched silk. Isadora stood before the moon altar in a gown of white lace and silver thread. One hand braced at the small of her back, where a deep ache had followed her all day. Torches ringed the ceremony pit. Pack banners snapped in the wind. Elders sat in a half-circle carved from stone, waiting for the words that would make her Luna of Dusk Hollow. Calder Vance, her promised alpha, her fated mate by every right their mothers had sworn to, held her wrist over the flame. His grip tightened. For a heartbeat, Isadora thought it was nerves. Then she caught his scent. Not devotion, not fear. Contempt. "Calder," she whispered, "you're hurting me." He let go as if burned and stepped back, face hard under the moonlight. "I reject this bond." Silence crashed through the square. Isadora blinked. The words did not fit in her head. "What?" Calder raised his voice so even the wolves at the back could hear. "Before sacred fire and witnesses, I reject Isadora Shadowfang as mate. I reject her claim to Luna. I reject the whelp she carries." A hiss rolled through the crowd. Isadora's fingers flew to her abdomen. She was barely 12 weeks, small enough to hide beneath wedding silk, but everyone had smelled the change in her blood days ago. She had thought he would be proud. She had thought, "Calder, no. You can't do this here." Her voice broke on the last word. "Not now." He laughed, a short, cruel bark. "Now is exactly when I do it. Better a public cut than a private rot." The oldest elder leaned forward. "Alpha heir, mind your tongue. The unborn has not been judged." Calder turned to the elder and spoke with careful clarity, like he had rehearsed each syllable. "Then judge this. I have never lain with her in a binding moon. Her belly is tainted. I will not saddle Dusk Hollow with another male's bastard." The plaza erupted. Gasps, snarls, delighted whispers. Isadora stared at him, mouth open, throat raw. He was lying. He knew he was lying. They had been together the night of the red moon, after the hunt, when he pressed his forehead to hers and swore, "Mine before all gods." "You swore to me," she said, too softly for anyone but him. His gaze flicked to her, briefly guilty, then shuddered. "I swore to a girl who knew her place." Two guards seized her arms. Her bouquet fell, white flowers scattering in ash. "Please," she said, twisting. "At least let me speak." "Strip the Luna veil," Calder ordered. One guard yanked the jeweled comb from her hair so hard her scalp stung. The other tore the veil from her shoulders. Lace ripped down the back of her dress with a dry scream of fabric. The crowd watched. No one moved. Isadora searched faces. Friends, cousins, women she had fed through winter. Some looked away. Some smirked. One of Calder's sisters called out, "Throw her to the border. Let rogues decide what's left." Calder descended the altar steps and stopped close enough that only she could hear him. "You'll leave tonight," he murmured. "No den, no name, no packmark. If you come back, I'll have your throat opened at the gate." His hand brushed her stomach with possessive disgust. "And if that thing lives, it lives without us." Rage finally pierced the shock. Isadora bared her teeth. "Coward!" He stepped back and, for the crowd, made a show of wiping his palm on his cloak. "By order of Dusk Hollow," he shouted, "Isadora Shadowfang is cast out." The guards dragged her through the square in torn silk and bare feet. Gravel bit into her skin. Someone spat. Someone threw a crust of bread that struck her shoulder and fell in the mud. At the outer gate, they unclasped her wedding cloak and shoved her into the dark. The gate slammed behind her. She stood there shaking, one hand over her belly, and listened to celebration drums begin inside the walls. Exile had a taste, cold iron and old hunger. For 3 months, Isadora lived in abandoned shepherd huts, under overturned wagons, in a limestone cave that dripped on her face all night. Her ankles swelled, her wrists thinned. She traded the silver wedding bangles she had hidden in her bodice for dried meat, then for kindling, then for moonroot tonic the apothecary stretched with water and lies. By first frost her medicine was gone. The baby had begun to kick. Small, fierce thuds that made her smile and cry in the same breath. Fever licked at her skin by evening, and sharp pains stitched across her lower belly whenever she walked too far. She knew what it meant if she did nothing. So she went back toward civilization, hood low, dress replaced by patched wool, boots 2 sizes too large from the dead trader she'd bartered with near the marsh. She headed for Bracken Ford, a border market where no one asked names if coin changed hands. The market smell hit her before the lights. Fish oil, wet straw, blood, smoke. She reached an herb stall just as dusk bled into night. Moonleaf, red bark, and charcoal, she said, placing her last ring on the counter. Please. The merchant, a gray-eyed wolf with scarred knuckles, looked at the ring, then at her face. Recognition sharpened his expression. You're Shadowfang. Isadora stiffened. I'm paying. He pushed the ring back with one finger. Can't sell to you. I need it for the pregnancy. Exactly. He lowered his voice. There's a posted order. Aid to the cast-out bride is treason against Alpha Valewood's alliance. She frowned. Valewood? Xavier Valewood bought half this border with grain and threats. The merchant glanced over her shoulder. He says you're a plague omen. Says anyone helping you helps rebellion. I don't care about rebellion. I need medicine. Then pray. He snatched his hand back like touching the ring would curse him. Go. She grabbed the counter to steady herself as a cramp knifed through her side. Please. Get out, he hissed. Before his patrol sense you. A hand closed around her elbow. Found her. The voice came from behind, young, eager, cruel. Isadora twisted and saw 3 wolves in Valewood colors. Black leather, crimson knotwork, silver cuff on the right wrist. Border enforcers. The tallest one grinned. The discarded Luna herself. We were told you'd be prettier. She jerked her elbow free and backed away. I have no quarrel with Valewood. You breathed on his roads. He lifted a chain looped at his belt. That's quarrel enough. The market blurred. Stalls. Lanterns. Faces turning away. Run, she thought. She ran. Pain slammed through her hips as she shoved through bodies, kicking crates behind her. Turnips exploded underfoot. Someone shouted. A dog barked. She cut down an alley slick with refuse and vaulted a low fence, skirt catching on a nail and tearing to the thigh. Left! Cut her off! Boots thundered behind her. She crossed the old mill bridge at a stumble, boards rattling under her weight. Wind knifed through the river gorge, her lungs burned. The baby rolled hard, as if bracing. I know, little one, she gasped. Just a little farther. Ahead lay the tree line marking Moonfall territory. The lands whispered to belong to the hidden Stormborn court, where law still mattered more than vendetta. If she could cross the cairn markers, even for one night. An arrow struck the tree beside her head. She flinched, lost footing, and went down hard on her knees. White pain flashed up her spine, mud soaked through wool. Her palms slid, gravel bit skin. Hands seized her from behind. Easy, one enforcer laughed in her ear. Don't want you breaking before the show. She thrashed once, twice, then froze as a chain snapped around her wrists. Iron bit old bruises. A second loop went around her ankles. Please, she rasped, breath shaking. I'm pregnant. Then kneel carefully, he said. Wouldn't want to damage Valewood's evidence. They dragged her anyway. By the time they hauled her into Moonfall Square, dawn had turned the clouds the color of bruises. The square was larger than any border town should have had. Tiered stone, carved moon sigils, a central platform ringed by spears. Wolves lined every level, traders, soldiers, elders in winter furs. She smelled curiosity first, then anger, then that eager scent crowds carried when they came to watch someone break. Valewood stood on the platform in a cloak edged with fox fur, handsome in the polished way snakes were beautiful. His smile widened when he saw her chains. "Isadora Shadowfang," he called, voice smooth as oil. "You trespassed. You stole from allied markets. You spread instability while carrying disputed blood." She swayed, trying to stay upright as the guards forced her forward. Valewood looked pointedly at her belly. "Tradition allows mercy. Beg for exile beyond the northern wastes, and perhaps I spare your life." A murmur rippled. A guard kicked the back of her knee. Down. She hit stone, breath punched from her chest. Chains clattered. Her wrists, already split, reopened against rough links. Blood warmed her skin, then chilled in the morning air. "Bow," the guard whispered, pressing her shoulders. Isadora locked her neck and stared at the platform instead. If she bowed now, she would disappear. Not just die, erase. Valewood's smile thinned. "Last chance, cast out, beg." Bootsteps sounded from the soldier ranks, slow, heavy, unhurried. A mud-streaked warrior in plain leathers stepped into the open, helm shadowing his face. No crest, no noble trim, just a scarred gauntlet and a sword worn to honest steel. He stopped beside Isadora. Then, before the whole square, he dropped to one knee. Gasps cracked like whips. The soldier's voice rolled out rough and resonant enough to shake the stones. "If she kneels, I kneel, and by this insult, I declare war." Valewood barked a laugh that didn't hide his alarm. "Who in Moon's name are you to declare?" The kneeling soldier reached up and removed his helm. Dark hair damp with sweat, a jagged scar through one brow, eyes like stormlight going silver at the edges. Every alpha on the platform went pale. "Xavier Stormborn," someone whispered. "The Alpha King." The name struck the crowd into stunned silence. Isadora stared at him, heartbeat tripping. Thunder and cedar flooded the air so suddenly her vision tipped. Her lungs seized. Something ancient and feral slammed through her bones like lightning seeking earth. He flinched too, one hand flying to his chest as if pierced. His gaze dropped to her rounded belly, and reverence, raw, stunned, unmistakable, broke across his face. "Mine," he said, hoarse with disbelief. Isadora's chains felt suddenly heavier, the square sharper, fate crueler than ever. She met the Alpha King's silver-lit eyes and whispered, "Don't promise what a crown can't keep." Stormborn did not look away. The square, the chains, Valewood's smirk, everything narrowed to the space between Isadora's mouth and his next breath. "Don't promise what a crown can't keep." For one suspended heartbeat, she expected anger. Kings were not challenged by women in chains, not in public, not while kneeling. Instead, his expression went raw. "Then I keep it without the crown," he said, voice low enough for only her and the wolves nearest them to hear. "And if I must burn crowns to do it, so be it." The bond struck again, harder this time. Heat ripped through her chest, down her spine, into her hips in a molten rush that made her gasp. Her wolf, dulled by hunger and fear for months, surged awake like it had been waiting behind a locked door, and someone had finally shattered the bolt. Her pulse stumbled, then snapped into a new rhythm. His. Stormborn sucked in a sharp breath, fingers flexing over his knee. His eyes flared silver, then flashed with a molten gold ring at the pupil, before settling back to stormlight. The scent of cedar deepened. Rain and lightning flooded the air until half the square could taste it. Valewood recovered first. "This is theater," he snapped, taking one step down from the platform. A mongrel trick to steal jurisdiction. She carries another male's get, and you would claim her now, in chains, to posture as savior? Stormborn rose with predatory calm, towering over Isadora and the guards both. Remove her irons. No one moved. He looked at the guard holding her chain. I said remove them. The guard glanced at Valewood. Stormborn didn't repeat himself. He grabbed the chain with both hands and pulled. Iron screamed. Links snapped apart and slithered across stone. The crowd recoiled. Isadora flinched from the sound anyway, from memory. Calder's grip, laughter in the square, hands yanking her veil. Stormborn's attention cut to her instantly, not the crowd, not Valewood, her. His hand rose toward her, then stopped midair, palm open. Request, not command. May I? He asked. No male had asked her that in months, maybe ever. Her throat tightened. She gave one short nod. He touched only her wrist first, gently turning it so he could see where the metal had split skin. His jaw clenched. When he lifted his gaze again, rain seemed to gather in it. King's protection, he said, loud now. Given under blood and bond. Let all present witness. Any hand raised against Isadora Shadowfang is raised against me. A howl answered from the outer ranks. Then another. And another. Stormborn's wolves. She hadn't even scented how many were hidden among the crowd until that moment. They stepped forward as one, gray cloaks shedding to reveal Stormcrest armor beneath. Valewood's smile went thin. Careful, Stormborn. You'd start a civil war over a discarded bride? Stormborn bared his teeth. No, over a king challenged under truce in his own square. He tilted his head. And over the fool who thought chaining my mate before dawn was a negotiable offense. The word mate went through her like another blade of heat. Terror and relief collided so hard she swayed. Stormborn caught her elbow before she could tip forward, steadying without pulling her against him. Breathe, he murmured. She realized she'd been panting shallowly and forced air into lungs that felt too small. I don't understand this. Neither do I, he said, and there was no lie in it. But I know what I felt. Valewood lifted his hands to his own soldiers. Stand down for now, he called, every syllable carefully smooth. The king has made an emotional declaration. Let him carry his complication back to camp. We'll settle legitimacy by law. Stormborn's eyes never left Valewood. By law, then, and by dawn, your patrols leave Moonfall roads. Valewood laughed softly. Or I stop calling this diplomacy. The square held its breath. Then Valewood bowed with mocking precision and stepped back. As His Majesty wishes. Stormborn didn't wait for further games. He stripped off his cloak and settled it around Isadora's shoulders, covering torn wool and bloodied wrists. The cloth was warm from his body. Can you walk? He asked. She hated that the answer was uncertain, hated that she wanted to lean. I can. He believed her enough not to carry her, but stayed close as they crossed the square. Their arms brushed once, and her whole body lit with electric awareness. Behind them, Stormcrest soldiers closed ranks. At the edge of the plaza, she looked back. Valewood stood perfectly still on the platform, watching with a smile that never reached his eyes. The war camp sprawled along Moonfall Ridge in disciplined rings of canvas and firelight. Scouts at every rise, sentries every 20 paces. Isadora expected to be taken straight to a guarded wagon or a healer's line. Instead, Stormborn brought her to the command tent, dismissed half the officers with one glance, then looked to her before speaking again. Too many scents in here, he said quietly. Would you prefer the healer's annex or my private tent with only women attendants? She blinked at him. You're asking me where I feel safest? Yes. The answer came out rougher than she meant. Private tent. He nodded once and sent for water, linen, and moonleaf tincture. Not barked, sent. When they were alone, save for one older she-wolf healer at the flap, Stormborn knelt in front of her stool with a basin steaming between them. He rolled up his sleeves, revealing forearms marked with old bite scars and fresh nicks. "You don't have to do this," she said as he dipped cloth into water. "I know." He lifted her hand. Even now, he waited half a breath, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. Warm water slid over torn skin. It stung, then soothed. He cleaned each split with patient precision, jaw hard whenever she hissed. No pity in his face, only focus. "You're shaking," she said, because he was. "Bond shock," he answered almost dry. "And rage." "At me?" His gaze snapped up. "At every wolf who watched you bleed." He wrapped her wrist in clean linen, tied it snug, then repeated the process on the other. When the healer entered with a small pot of tonic, Stormborn took it, tested heat against his palm, and held it over the brazier until steam rose. He handed it to her with both hands as if it were ceremonial. "Moonleaf, red bark, charcoal trace," he said. "No wolfsbane, I checked." She stared at him. "You knew the mix." "I asked what pregnant wolves are given for fever and cramping." A beat. "I should have known already." She drank. The bitterness curled her tongue, but warmth spread through her belly. Some of the knife-edge pain eased. Stormborn stayed kneeling, forearms resting on his thighs, eyes level with her middle rather than her face, reverent, hesitant. "May I speak to the cub?" he asked. The absurdity of it nearly made her laugh. They were strangers bound by lightning and politics and blood, with an enemy on her heels, and this king was asking permission like a nervous first father. "You think the baby can hear intention?" "I think wolves hear more than we understand." Something inside her softened by a single, dangerous degree. "Go on then." Stormborn exhaled, placed one hand lightly, not touching skin, just hovering over wool, and said, "Little Storm, this is Xavier. I'm late and I'm sorry for that. You and your mother are under my protection now. I will earn that. Every day." Isadora looked away quickly because her eyes burned. Night fell hard over the ridge. Camp noises faded to low voices and watch calls. She insisted she could sleep alone. Stormborn agreed immediately, set 2 female guards outside, and left. She dreamed of the wedding fire, of lace tearing, of hands on her shoulders forcing her down while drums pounded and Calder smiled. She woke with a strangled cry, claws half out, heart slamming so hard she thought she might be sick. Male scent in the canvas. Too much. Too close. She scrambled backward on the cot, breath shredding. Then she heard it. A steady huff of breath just beyond the tent flap. Slow. Grounded. Familiar already in a way that made no sense. She crept to the opening and lifted the edge. Stormborn lay curled across the entrance in full wolf form, enormous charcoal gray body blocking the gap between her and the camp. One ear lifted at the movement, silver eyes opening in the dark. He thumped his tail once against the earth but did not rise, did not push in. Guarding. Not claiming. She let the flap fall and sat back on the cot, listening to his breathing until her pulse eased. For the first time since exile, she slept without waking every hour to check if she was still alive. 2 days later, snow began. By evening, the command pavilion blazed with braziers and lamplight for war council, allied alphas, elders, quartermasters, and the kind of nobles who wore fur cuffs into battle planning, as if winter itself might admire them. Stormborn wanted Isadora present when supply routes and border law were argued. "Only if you want to be there," he'd said. She had surprised herself by answering yes. When she entered on his arm, conversations stuttered, then resumed in lower tones. She caught the words discarded, tainted, convenient in the rustle. Plates clinked, wine poured. No one met her eyes for long. Stormborn heard it too. She could feel tension gather in him like thunderheads, but he let it pass for the first hour, choosing politics over spectacle while scouts reported rogue raids on grain caravans. Then an elder from Frostback, thin, jeweled fingers, mouth like a cut seam, leaned across the table as Isadora reached for her tonic. "Curious," he drawled. "Her scent does shift near the king. Almost convincing." Isadora kept her hand steady on the cup. "Almost?" The elder smiled without warmth. "Royal blood has signatures. If one wished certainty, one might test at the throat." Before she could react, his hand shot out toward her neck. Stormborn moved faster than sight. Crack. The elder screamed as Stormborn caught his wrist mid-grab and bent until bone snapped cleanly. Chairs scraped back, guards surged. Stormborn released him only to shove him onto the table, goblet spilling red across maps. "King's law," Stormborn said, voice cold enough to frost glass. "Maid harassment and forced scenting. High offense. Repeat it, and I remove the hand entirely." The elder clutched his arm, white-faced. "She is not crowned. She is disputed." Stormborn turned to the room. "Then hear this and dispute openly." His voice rose, filling canvas and timber. "From this night forward, Isadora Shadowfang enters any hall under my authority. All present will stand. Not for ornament, for law. Disrespect to her is treason against the crown." Silence. Then, one by one, wolves stood. Some stiffly, some with bowed heads, a few with open resentment. But they stood. Isadora's fingers tightened around her cup until ceramic clicked against her ring. She had begged for scraps in mud 3 months ago. Now grown alphas were on their feet because one male had redrawn the line between gossip and crime. She did not know what to do with the ache that rose behind her ribs. The feast resumed, brittle and formal. Stormborn resumed strategy as if he hadn't just broken a political elder like kindling. Isadora forced herself to sip tonic, though her appetite had fled. A young servant approached with a fresh tray, bread, broth, another steaming cup. "For the lady," he murmured, eyes down. Stormborn's hand closed over the cup before it reached her. "Protocol," he said mildly. "I taste first." The servant stiffened. "Majesty, it was prepared for—" "I know." He drank. For 3 heartbeats, nothing happened. On the 4th, the cup shattered from his hand. Stormborn lurched, one fist hitting the table hard enough to split wood, then crashed to his knees. Foam touched the corner of his mouth, his pupils blew wide. "Xavier." Isadora dropped beside him, panic slicing clean through shock. Guards drew blades. Someone seized the servant. The pavilion exploded into shouting. "Don't move him," Isadora snapped, louder than she knew she could. "Get me charcoal, salt water, and the healer's wolfsbane antidote kit, now." A captain hesitated. "Wolfsbane antidote is for silver poisoning." "Now!" He ran. Stormborn convulsed once, choking. Isadora forced his jaw open with both hands, ignoring the strength in him even poisoned, and shoved 2 fingers back to clear his throat. He gagged, coughed black spit onto the rushes. "Stay with me," she ordered, voice shaking but hard. "You don't get to declare wars and die at my table." His eyes found hers for half a second, silver gone glassy, then rolled. The kit arrived. She ripped it open, measured by scent and instinct from too many nights doctoring herself in exile. Charcoal paste, bitter neutralizer, diluted wolfsbane counter. "Hold him," she told 2 guards. "If he bites, let him. Do not let him aspirate." She poured the first dose between his teeth and clamped his jaw shut, rubbing his throat until he swallowed. Half came back up. She gave more. Again. Again. Minutes stretched cruelly. Then the tremors eased. Stormborn's breathing, ragged and frighteningly shallow, deepened one fraction. Color crawled back from ash gray to bruised human. The healer finally shoved through the ring of bodies, took one look, and swore softly. "You kept him alive." Isadora sat back on her heels, hands blackened with charcoal and shaking so hard she nearly dropped the vial. Across the pavilion, the captured servant broke under interrogation in 3 terrified sentences. Valewood gold, kitchen infiltration, dose meant for Isadora's nightly tonic. Not the king. Her. Stormborn woke near midnight in his tent, hoarse and weak, with Isadora dozing in a chair beside his cot. When he shifted, she came instantly awake, hand on his chest before thought. "You're alive," she whispered. "Because you are terrifying," he rasped. Despite everything, a breath of laughter escaped her. He covered her hand with his. "I should have stopped it before it reached you." "You did," she said. "And then I stopped it from taking you." She held his gaze, steady now. "Protection goes both ways, remember?" Something fierce and tender moved through his expression. "I remember." She did not pull her hand away. Outside, the camp settled under snow and sentry calls. Inside, for the first time, Isadora let herself lean forward until her forehead rested lightly against his shoulder. Just for a moment. Just enough to feel the bond hum, alive and answered, instead of feared. Outside, the camp settled under snow and sentry calls. Inside, for the first time, Isadora let herself lean forward until her forehead rested lightly against his shoulder. Just for a moment. Just enough to feel the bond hum, alive and answered, instead of feared. Stormborn's breathing was still weak, but steadier now. His fingers curled around hers like he needed proof she was real. A knock struck the tent pole. Once. Urgent. Stormborn's captain, Rurik, slipped inside without waiting for permission, snow crusted on his cloak, and a sealed leather tube in his fist. "Majesty. Interrogation report, plus courier packets from Eastmarch and Thornridge, marked immediate." Stormborn started to sit. Pain pinched his face. "Don't be stupid," Isadora said, pressing him back with a hand to his sternum. "You nearly died 3 hours ago." A ghost of a smile touched his mouth. "Yes, Luna." He caught himself softer. "Isadora." Rurik's brows flicked up at that. Then he knelt by the cot and broke the first seal. His voice went flat as he read. "Statement from Kitchen Infiltrator confirms payment through Valewood intermediaries. Coin traced to Red Hollow Mint House. Secondary report. 2 scribes in Brackenford paid to copy lineage records and ceremonial bedrite logs. Copies circulated to 7 border packs by Raven." Isadora sat straighter. "Lineage records of who?" Rurik hesitated, then handed her the second parchment. Her own name stared back in hard black ink. Isadora Shadowfang, formally pledged to Calder Vance of Dusk Hollow. Pregnancy dated to pre-termination period. Probable paternity. Vance line. No claim upon Stormborn succession. Her stomach turned. "It's forged," she said immediately. "The dates are wrong. The witness marks? Those aren't my pack elder's hands." Stormborn's voice roughened. "That doesn't matter if enough wolves want to believe it." Rurik unrolled the next strip. Petitions attached from 3 border alphas. If the king raises another line's cub as heir, they suspend fealty until legitimacy is settled. They call it protection of blood law. "Blood law," Isadora repeated, bitter. "Convenient." Stormborn held out his hand. She gave him the pages. He read in silence, jaw hardening with every line. Rurik continued. "There's more. Grain caravans hit tonight on the North Road and at Meyerben Crossing. Not robbery, burns. Sacks split and left to rot in slush. Rogue signatures were staged, but our trackers say disciplined boots. Military spacing." "Valewood funded," Stormborn said. Rurik nodded. "He's starving the packs that side with us, then blaming instability on sheltering Isadora." Isadora felt the pieces lock together, cold and precise. He doesn't just want me dead, he wants me visible. Useful. Stormborn's gaze lifted to hers. There was no comfort in it, only truth. He wants you as proof that I am compromised, that I kneel to sentiment over law. She almost laughed at the irony of that word. Law. Rurik took a final parchment from the tube and laid it on the blanket. Last item. A notice from Valewood's Court Herald. He requests ceremonial arbitration under Old Moon statutes. Pending. Stormborn's eyes narrowed. Pending what clause? Not specified yet. The Herald says terms will be delivered publicly at Council Dawn. Rurik waited for orders. Stormborn gave them in clipped commands. Double grain escorts, seize any unregistered scribe, lock down kitchens, recall border scouts. Rurik saluted and vanished. When they were alone again, the quiet felt different. Not tender. Weapon sharp. Isadora stared at the forged lineage sheet until the letters blurred. Calder, she whispered. He gave them the bedright dates. Stormborn's head turned. You're certain? He announced at the fire that he'd never touched me in a binding moon. That specific phrase. Only a male trying to preempt records speaks like that. He'd already sold the story. Stormborn swore under his breath, old and violent. She rubbed her abdomen absently. The baby shifted beneath her palm, a slow roll as if restless with her. Valewood's dangerous because he doesn't need truth, she said. He needs procedure. He'll drown us in rules that sound honorable until there's no breath left. Stormborn watched her a long moment, then reached, careful, always careful, and touched 2 fingers to the back of her wrist where the bandage crossed. Then we fight him in truth and procedure both. She met his eyes. Can your crown survive that? He gave the faintest, fiercest nod. If it can't, it doesn't deserve to. Dawn brought a council hall full of wolves pretending not to look at her. This time, when Isadora entered beside Stormborn, every table rose immediately. The scrape of benches echoed like 100 grudging admissions. She could feel resentment like static in the air, but they stood. Law had teeth now. At the center dais, a herald in crimson knotwork bowed theatrically and unrolled a silver-rimmed scroll. On behalf of Alpha Xavier Valewood of the Red Hollow Alliance, I deliver formal notification. Stormborn remained seated, expression unreadable. Read. The herald smiled thinly and projected his voice to the rafters. Given disputes of blood legitimacy, governance judgment, and war conduct, Alpha Valewood invokes Old Moon Law, Article 9, Ceremonial Challenge before Gathered Packs. Terms: single combat to settle superior claim and confidence of rule. Refusal by either party constitutes admission of weakness and forfeiture of contested allegiance. A ripple ran through the room. Isadora felt it physically: fear, interest, hunger for spectacle. Stormborn said nothing. The herald continued, savoring each word. Challenge date: next full moon, Moonfall Arena. Witnessed by all signatory packs. May the stronger law prevail. He rolled the scroll, bowed again, and added, almost as an afterthought, supplementary petitions attached regarding the disputed condition of the woman called Isadora Shadowfang and her unborn issue. Leave, Stormborn said. The herald bowed and backed out, smug as a cat fed cream. Immediately, voices erupted. It's a trap. You cannot refuse. If you duel while winter stores are unstable, we bleed men on 2 fronts. Border packs are already wavering. Stormborn stood. Silence dropped. We answer by dusk, he said. The council broke into smaller knots. Rurik moved to coordinate scouts. Quartermasters argued routes. 2 alphas from Eastern Hills demanded private guarantees about succession. Isadora remained at the map table, scanning pins marking grain stores, attack points, and now, traitor territories. Everywhere Valewood had touched, there was hunger or doubt. Stormborn came to her side. You should rest. She didn't look up. No. Isadora. She turned then, low and fierce. If I leave the room every time men discuss my body and your throne in the same sentence, I become exactly what he says I am. A weakness to hide. Something in him answered that tone. I don't want to hide you. Then don't sideline me. He leaned one hand on the table close enough that she could smell cedar beneath healing herbs. I want you alive. There's a difference. Attraction and anger twisted together so tightly she could barely separate them. And I want my child fed through winter. Your grain roots are part of that. So unless you plan to lock me in your tent, give me a task. His mouth curved despite the strain. I considered locking you in my tent for exactly 6 seconds this morning. 6? I'm improving. She huffed a breath that might have been a laugh. Try harder. A pause. Then he slid a root ledger toward her. You know border markets better than any of my nobles. Tell me where smugglers can move medicine and grain without touching Valewood checkpoints. She took the ledger. Their fingers brushed. The bond sparked hard enough that both stilled. Fine, she said, too evenly. But I want archivist access. If he forged lineage records, there'll be ink source patterns. Stormborn blinked once, impressed. Granted. By noon, Isadora had 3 covert supply paths marked through shepherd trails and limestone cuts she'd used in exile. By afternoon, scouts confirmed one route was already shadowed by Red Knot spies. Pressure built with each report. 2 more caravans harried. 1 ally pack, delaying commitment. Rumors spreading that Stormborn drank poison meant for a lover carrying another Alpha's bastard. By evening, even the loyal wolves were tired-eyed. When Isadora finally rose from the maps, her lower back screamed. Stormborn saw her wince and, without making a show of it, shifted a chair behind her. Sit. I can stand. Sit anyway. She did, because her knees trembled and because she was beginning to trust that obeying him in small things didn't erase her. Snow thickened after nightfall, turning campfires into blurred halos. Isadora couldn't sleep. Too many numbers in her head. Too many ways hunger became war before claws ever touched. She wrapped in Stormborn's spare cloak and slipped from her tent. No guard stopped her. They only shadowed at a respectful distance. She made it as far as the old watch ridge before his scent found her. Thunder before rain. You vanish quietly for someone who claims she can't be sidelined, Stormborn said from the path. She didn't startle anymore when he appeared. That scared her more than anything. I needed air. He came to stand beside her at the ridge edge. Below, the camp glowed in concentric circles, disciplined and fragile all at once. Beyond that, black forest and enemy roads. For a while they just listened to wind move through bare branches. Then he said, I should tell you something before tomorrow decides too much. She waited. I wasn't supposed to be visible, he said. For years. My father kept me hidden among common ranks while rival alphas fought for proximity to the throne. I learned to march as nobody, eat with soldiers, bleed where chroniclers don't look. A bitter half-smile. That mud-streaked soldier in the square? That wasn't disguise. It was where I lived. Isadora looked at him. Moonlight caught the scar through his brow, the older lines at his mouth that came from command too young. And then? Then my father died, and I inherited a crown and a nest of wolves who respected fear more than law. He exhaled white into the dark. I can win wars. I'm less certain I can untangle customs that keep hurting the ones who can't fight back. She swallowed against an unexpected ache. You're not the only one uncertain. He turned, fully facing her now. Tell me. The words came slow, scraped from places she'd boarded shut. If this child is yours, I don't know what that means for her safety. If this child isn't... Her voice broke. She forced it steady. No. Listen. If she isn't, I need to know you won't wake one day and see me as a political error you were too honorable to discard. Stormborn's expression went absolutely still. Then he stepped closer, stopping short of touch. Isadora, I knelt before I knew anything except that they were hurting you. I would have knelt if there were no child at all. Her breath caught. My wolf knew you, he said. My choice followed, not the other way around. She closed her eyes briefly, then opened them to his. I don't know how to believe good things yet. You don't have to, he said. You can test them. He lifted his hand, palm up between them, offering. After a long moment, she placed hers in it. The bond flared warm and deep, not lightning this time but banked fire. He threaded his fingers through hers and simply stood there, shoulder to shoulder while wind howled around the ridge. When she shifted, a sudden cramp pulled low across her abdomen. She hissed. Stormborn tightened gently. Pain? Just pulling. She's active tonight. May I? She guided his hand to the side of her belly where the movement had been. They both stilled. A sharp kick landed directly beneath his palm. Stormborn's eyes widened like a man hit in the chest. A laugh, disbelieving and soft, escaped him. She kicked me. She disapproves of kings. Good. She'll survive court. Isadora surprised herself by laughing too, quiet and real. Some wall inside her gave way another inch. They stayed until cold forced them back. At her tent flap, Stormborn hesitated. I'll be outside. You don't need to. I know. She looked at him in the snowlight, this impossible male who asked permission and broke wrists and drank poison and listened when she said no. Stay, she said. His answering nod was almost reverent. The strike came before dawn. A horn blasted from the east watchtower, 3 short, 1 long, breach signal. Isadora jolted awake to shouting and steel. She was on her feet before thought, pulling boots as another horn answered from the grain quarter. Smoke already knifed under the tent seam. Outside was chaos. Wolves running half-armored, buckets passing, sparks lifting into black sky where the eastern store tents burned in bright, hungry sheets. Incendiaries! Someone shouted. Oil jars at the ropes! Rogues in patched leathers poured through a cut in the outer palisade, moving too efficiently to be true rogues. Behind them, figures in dark cloaks targeted supply wagons first, not warriors. Valewood's hand, surgical. Stormborn, bareheaded and armed, met the first wave near the central lane and dropped 2 attackers in as many heartbeats. Rurik rallied guards to flank left. Isadora grabbed a water skin and joined a bucket line until a blast of heat forced them back from collapsing canvas. Then she smelled it. Not smoke, not oil. Silver. Her head snapped toward the healer annex. 2 cloaked assailants were forcing the rear flap, blades wrapped in cloth that smoked where it touched leather. Silver team, she screamed. At the healers! They turned at her voice and bolted, not away, but toward her. She ran. Pain knifed through her hips. The ground was slick with slush and ash. One attacker lunged, silver-edged short sword flashing. She twisted. The blade skimmed her sleeve and kissed skin at her upper arm. Fire exploded through her blood. She stumbled, teeth gritted against a cry. The second came in low with a chain net. A gray blur hit him from the side. Stormborn's wolf, massive and furious, slamming the attacker into a supply post hard enough to crack wood. The first assailant recovered and raised the silver blade at Stormborn's flank. Isadora didn't think. She snatched a burning brand from the nearest brazier and drove it into the attacker's face. He screamed, dropped the blade, and she kicked it under a wagon wheel. More shouts. More wolves converging. The silver team broke formation and tried to scatter into smoke. Take them alive! Stormborn roared, shifting back mid-stride with impossible speed, blood on his shoulder and murder in his eyes. I want names! A thunderous crack split the night. Then another. Not thunder. Powder charges. The eastern grain stores collapsed in sequence, deliberate demolition, burying half the winter reserve under flame and falling timbers. The camp froze for one stunned second. Then a messenger wolf, fur scorched and limping, barreled into the lane, panting blood. Majesty, he choked. Ridge courier intercepted. Valewood proclamation posted to every border gate. Says attack proves you cannot defend your own camp. Demands public answer to Old Moon challenge by sunrise. Or 6 allied packs defect at noon. Stormborn's face went carved stone. Isadora pressed a hand to her burning arm, silver pain spreading in hot, nauseating waves. In the distance, another store tent went up like dry straw. Critical losses, public deadline, defections within hours. Valewood had set the board and lit it on fire, and dawn was coming fast. And dawn was coming fast. Rurik found them in the smoke-choked lane. Blood streaked down his cheek, one gauntlet black with soot. Majesty. Arena heralds are already riding. Valewood moved the challenge forward. Says by emergency statute he can call assembly at midday under war threat. Stormborn's lip curled. He burns my grain at night, then invokes emergency at dawn. He wants witnesses before our allies can regroup, Isadora said, voice tight against the silver burn crawling up her arm. Another messenger slammed to a stop, panting. 3 border packs crossed their banners to neutral colors. They'll decide after the duel. Stormborn looked at the burning stores, then at his wolves dragging bound assassins through the slush. If I refuse, we bleed allegiance by noon. If I accept blind, he kills me in a theater and calls it law. Isadora pressed fingers into the wound at her upper arm until pain sharpened her thinking. Silver contamination made her pulse jump, but her mind was suddenly clear. Then don't accept blind. He turned. She met his gaze through smoke and winter wind. I'm coming to the arena. No. Listen to me. She stepped closer, forcing him to see she was steady even if she shook. Old Moon doesn't only allow ceremonial challenge, it also allows trial by witness when blood legitimacy is contested. Rurik frowned. That clause is ceremonial dust. No one invokes it. Because no one wants records inspected in public, she snapped. Valewood's whole strategy is paperwork and rumor. I can rip both open before he gets his duel. Stormborn's jaw worked. You're hurt. I'm useful. A beat. Then he barked, Rurik, fetch every archivist wolf on this ridge. Chain of custody boxes, ink ledgers, witness seals. Drag the captured scribes if you have to, and bring Calder Vance and irons. Rurik blinked once at the last name, then nodded. At once. Stormborn faced Isadora again, eyes storm-dark. If we do this, you stay behind my guard ring. If we do this, she said, you let me speak. His nostrils flared. Then, rough. You have my word. Moonfall Arena rose from the valley like a stone maw, tiered seats packed with wolves, banners snapping, winter sun glaring off steel. At the highest arch hung the Old Moon pennant, white crescent on black, the symbol that said what happened here could rewrite loyalty. Valewood stood in the center sand in polished armor trimmed crimson, every inch the noble predator. His smile widened when Stormborn entered the gate opposite him, then thinned when Isadora walked beside the king. She wore dark leathers over her swollen belly, arm bound where silver had nicked her, chin high. A murmur tore through the stands. Valewood spread his hands. You bring your omen to watch you fall? Isadora didn't break stride. I brought your lies to bury you first. The officiating elder, Frostback's replacement, a broad she-wolf with ritual scars, lifted a staff. By Old Moon! Trial by witness, Isadora called, her voice cracking across the arena before the elder could finish. Invoked under Clause 17 by bonded mate carrying contested royal blood. Silence punched outward. The elder stared. State your standing. Isadora stepped onto the dais stairs despite the ache in her hips, despite Stormborn's hand hovering at her elbow ready to catch if she stumbled. Isadora Shadowfang, Moonbond recognized in public square by king and witnesses, unborn blood disputed by forged record. I demand evidence inspection before combat. Valewood laughed, sharp and false. Convenient theater from a desperate woman. Then if I'm lying, Isadora said, turning so the whole arena could hear. You should welcome open records. The elder looked to Stormborn. King? Stormborn's voice was iron. Granted. The staff struck stone once. Trial by witnesses recognized. Rurik and 2 archivist wolves carried in sealed boxes and laid them on the central table. Behind them came 3 men in chains, the Brackenford scribes, and Calder Vance in torn noble wool, face bruised, wrists manacled. Gasps rolled from the stands at the sight of him. Calder found Isadora and instantly looked away. Valewood's smile was gone now. This is unlawful seizure. By King's protection in active sedition, Rurik said flatly. Very lawful. The first archivist, an old wolf named Maeve with ink-stained fingers, broke seals and lifted the disputed lineage scrolls. She brought them to Isadora. Scent check? Isadora inhaled, closing her eyes. Parchment, wax, cedar cabinet dust. And underneath, a bitter metallic tang she remembered from border stalls, where counterfeit permits were stamped fast and dirty. Not Dusk Hollow ink, she said. Red Hollow gall mix, too much iron soot. Maeve nodded and held up a control ledger from authentic Dusk Hollow records. Compare. The difference was obvious now, even to non-archivists once explained. Authentic ink dried matte brown. Forged lines gleamed black with metallic sheen. The witness signatures on the fake sheets had been transferred with pressure plates, leaving identical tremor marks impossible in handwritten originals. Murmurs became snarls. Valewood called from the sand. Scent is not law. Maeve bared her teeth. Then receipts are. She slammed down a merchant ledger showing purchase orders for iron soot ink paid from a Red Hollow military account. Signed by your quartermaster. One scribe broke first, voice wobbling. We were paid. We copied what we were given. By whom? Isadora demanded. The scribe pointed at Valewood with a shaking chained hand. His steward. Said it was to prevent succession fraud. The second scribe spat. He said if we refused, our pups wouldn't eat this winter. Valewood shouted over them. Purchase testimony. Isadora pointed toward Calder. Bring him forward. Calder was hauled to the table. He smelled like fear and old pride gone sour. He tried for disdain and failed when he saw the crowd's eyes. Isadora faced him fully. Tell them about the bargain. He swallowed. There was no bargain. Rurik hit the table with a dagger hilt. Perjury in trial by witness carries tongue cut. Calder flinched. Isadora leaned in, voice low but carrying. You rejected me at the fire because you believed my child would threaten your hold on Dusk Hollow. Valewood promised grain, soldiers, and recognition if you publicly called me tainted and supplied bedright dates to muddy paternity. Did he not? Calder's eyes darted to Valewood. Valewood's expression promised murder. Calder folded. Yes, he shouted. Yes, moon damn you, yes. He promised alliance if I severed you publicly. Said humiliation would make the story stick. Said no court would defend a cast-out bride. The arena exploded. Howls, curses, benches slamming as wolves surged to their feet. Valewood drew a blade and pointed it at Calder. Liar! The officiating elder slammed her staff. Hold! Trial testimony stands. Before she could speak sentence, movement flashed high in the west stands. 3 cloaked figures rose together, crossbows unfolding from beneath their cloaks. At the same instant, a red pennant dropped from the upper arch, the signal marker for hidden shooters. Isadora saw it first. Down! She screamed. Bolts hissed through air. One struck the table. Another took an archivist in the shoulder. Panic ripped through the tiers as more assassins stood from scattered seats, silver glinting at their wrists. Stormborn shifted half-form with a snarl, claws out, shoving Isadora behind him as guards charged. Pain knifed low in Isadora's abdomen, harder than any cramp yet. She doubled, breath gone, then looked up and saw the red pennant still whipping overhead, guiding every hidden shooter to target lines. If that banner stayed, Stormborn's guard would be butchered in crossfire. She made her choice. Ignoring the pain, ignoring the roar in her ears, she shoved past the guard ring and ran for the dais rigging. Isadora! Stormborn roared behind her. She leapt, caught the hanging line with both hands and hauled. Silver fire shot up her wounded arm. Her claws punched halfway through her fingers, partial shift ripping skin as labor-like pressure slammed her spine. She bit down on a cry and tore downward with everything she had. The pennant ripped free. She threw back her head and howled. Long, sharp bursts, pack code coordinates Stormborn scouts had taught her over maps. West Upper, 3 shooters. North Arch, 2. Tunnel Gate, 4, moving. Rurik answered the call and redirected archers instantly. Stormborn's wolves pivoted as one, cutting assassins before their second volley. Ritual shattered. Arena became battlefield. Valewood could no longer hide in law. He ran. The moment his shooters were exposed and his steward dragged from the stands, Valewood vaulted the barrier and disappeared beneath the arena into the service tunnels. Stormborn pursued with 6 guards, blood running down one temple, rage like a storm front. Isadora hit the tunnel entrance seconds later, breath ragged, one hand braced under her belly against another brutal tightening. "He'll take the east sluice," she gasped. "Comes out by the old quarry." Rurik moved to block her. "You're bleeding." "I know this arena. I mapped it this morning from the archivist plans. East tunnel narrows at the drainage arch. Go." Rurik signaled 2 teams and sprinted. Isadora did not wait at the entrance. By the time Valewood reached the drainage arch, boots splashing through black meltwater, Isadora was there. She had shifted fully. Gray-black wolf, larger than she had any right to be in late pregnancy, flank streaked with blood where stone had torn her, eyes molten with pain and fury. She stood in the tunnel mouth, shoulders braced, teeth bared. Valewood skidded, then laughed breathlessly. "Look at you, still crawling in filth to feel powerful." Isadora's growl filled the tunnel. He drew a silver blade from his boot. "Move, bitch, or I carve the lie out of your belly myself." She lunged. He slashed. Silver kissed her side and smoke hissed from fur. She slammed him into the wall anyway, jaws snapping inches from his throat. He drove an elbow into her muzzle and twisted free just as footsteps thundered in. Stormborn hit him from behind, back in human form, and drove him face first into stone. The silver blade clattered into water. Valewood spat blood and laughed. "Finally! No witnesses down here, Stormborn. Kill me like a coward king." Stormborn dragged him upright by the throat and hauled him back into the arena tunnel mouth, where torches and wolves and watching alphas could see. Isadora shifted back on shaking legs, clutching her torn flank, refusing to fall. In the open sand, Stormborn kicked the recovered silver blade so it skidded to Valewood's feet. "No shadows," he said, voice carrying to the top tier. "No poison. Fight me with your own strength." Valewood wiped blood from his mouth, eyes wild. "Gladly." They circled in blood-streaked sand while the arena held its breath. Valewood was fast, court-trained, vicious in close cuts. Stormborn was faster where it mattered, absorbing one slash to the shoulder to land a crushing hook that sent Valewood to one knee. Valewood shifted partial and lunged with claws for the king's eyes. Stormborn caught his wrist, twisted, and drove a knee into his ribs until something cracked. Valewood screamed, rolled, grabbed sand, and flung it. Stormborn turned his face, then tackled him anyway, both men slamming hard enough to shake dust from the arches. When they broke apart, Valewood staggered, chest heaving, one arm dangling useless. Stormborn stood over him, bleeding from 3 cuts but steady as stone. Yield. Valewood looked past him to Isadora, bloodied, upright, unbroken, and found one last sneer. You were always the discarded one. Isadora stepped forward, voice clear as steel. Discarded women become queens when they stop asking permission. A howl ripped from Stormborn's wolves. Valewood spat at the ground and tried to rise with the silver blade hidden in his left hand. Stormborn saw it, disarmed him with one brutal kick, and drove him down again, forearm at his throat. By Old Moon and King's Law, Stormborn said, breathing hard, Xavier Valewood is found guilty of sedition, ritual corruption, attempted regicide, attempted murder of a royal mate, and winter sabotage. Sentence: death at dawn, crest burned, line stripped of rank and holding. Guards chained Valewood where he knelt. He went quiet then, finally afraid. Dawn was pale and merciless on the execution ground. All signatory alphas stood witness. Valewood, bound to the black post, still wore arrogance like a torn cloak. Stormborn asked once, as law required, "Any final challenge?" Valewood's laugh was hoarse. "History remembers strength, not your pretty laws." Stormborn nodded to the executioner. "Then let history watch." The blade fell clean. When it was done, the red hollow crest was nailed to the brazier frame and burned until silver inlay ran like tears. Heralds read the strip decree aloud. Lands redistributed. Command dissolved. Oath-broken line reduced to common status under supervision. Calder Vance was brought forward next, shaking. For conspiracy and ritual false witness, Dusk Hollow stripped him publicly of heir claim and exiled him to labor service on winter roads under guard. He looked once at Isadora, mouth opening as if to beg. She turned away. By midday, 6 wavering packs renewed fealty to Stormborn's standard. By night, Isadora was in labor. The first contraction dropped her to one knee outside the healer tent, breath punched out, fingers digging into canvas rope. Stormborn was beside her instantly. "Isadora!" "Don't you dare panic," she hissed through clenched teeth. He looked briefly offended. "I am not panicking." Rurik, hovering nearby with the expression of a wolf who would rather charge spears than witness childbirth, muttered, "Majesty, you are visibly panicking." "Out!" Healer Maeve snapped at both males as attendants rushed Isadora inside. "Unless you can catch babies with your teeth, get out of my way." Stormborn got exactly 1 step inside before Maeve pointed at the flap. He stopped, looked at Isadora on the birthing pallet. Sweat-damp hair, feral eyes, hand white-knuckled around a rolled blanket, and waited. She reached for him. "Stay where I can see you." He exhaled shakily and took position just outside the curtain line, close enough that their fingers could touch when she stretched her hand. Labor was long and brutal and nothing like the gentle myths sung at ceremonies. Isadora cursed in 3 dialects. She threatened to bite Stormborn's face off twice. He told her, solemnly, she could bite whatever she wanted if she kept breathing. Maeve barked orders. Dawn bled into afternoon. At the final push, Isadora roared full wolf and human at once, and the child slid into Maeve's waiting hands with a furious, indignant cry that cut through the tent like sunlight. "A daughter," Maeve announced, grinning despite the blood on her arms. Strong lungs, strong grip. Stormborn made a sound Isadora had never heard from him, half laugh, half sob. They laid the baby on Isadora's chest, tiny, warm, damp, fists already flexing. Dark hair plastered to a round skull. When Stormborn stepped in at Maeve's nod, the child turned her face toward his scent and quieted. He touched one finger to her cheek. Reverent. "Hello, little Storm." Isadora looked from daughter to king and felt something settle deep and undeniable. Family, she thought. Not borrowed. Built. 6 nights later, under a full moon washed clean by winter wind, Isadora climbed the steps to the moon altar. No court, no witnesses, no banners, just stone, starlight, and Stormborn waiting in plain black, scarred and solemn, throat bared. Their daughter slept in a guarded cradle tent below, watched by Maeve and 3 wolves who would have fought gods for her. At the altar center, Stormborn stopped an arm's length away. "Are you certain?" he asked. Isadora's shoulder, the one Valewood's silver had cut, throbbed beneath healing skin. So did every old wound that had led her here. She met his gaze. "Ask me again." His voice roughened. "Do you choose this bond? Not for law, not for crown. For you." "I choose it," she said. "Do you?" He stepped closer, kneeling first on the cold stone. "I choose you, Isadora Shadowfang, in blood, in battle, in peace. Mine, if you want me." She knelt with him, knees touching. "Yours," she whispered. "If you remember, I belong to myself first." A wet laugh broke from him. "That's half the reason I fell." He lifted his hand to her jaw and waited. She nodded once. Stormborn bent to the junction of her neck and shoulder, breath warm on skin. The first press of teeth was careful, testing. Then he bit. Pain flashed bright, sharp enough to arch her spine, a cry caught in her throat. Heat followed instantly, molten and racing, not outward but inward. Down her chest, through her womb, along the marrow of her bones. The world narrowed to his mouth, his scent, the pulse pounding where his teeth held and released with reverent restraint. She clutched his shoulders, nails digging into scar and muscle, as the pain transformed into fierce, breathless pleasure that felt like being claimed and seen at once. The mark bloomed. She felt it like a second heartbeat. Stormborn pulled back, lips blood-warm against her skin, eyes silver and wrecked. "Mate," he breathed. "Mine." Isadora grabbed his hair at the nape and pulled him down until his throat was exposed to her mouth. "My turn," she said, voice shaking with power. He went still, then tipped his head farther, offering everything. Consent unmistakable. She kissed the place first, tasting salt and skin and the wild thunder of him. Then she bit hard. He groaned, sound torn from somewhere deep as her teeth broke skin. His hands clenched at her waist, but did not hold her back. Heat surged through the bond again, doubling, a current completing a circuit that had sparked unfinished since Moonfall Square. Images flooded between them, hers of cold exile nights and torn lace and stubborn survival. His of soldier mud, hidden crowns, and a boy taught to trust no one. Fear, rage, hunger, devotion. It all poured across the link and came back accepted, not flinched from. He whispered against her temple, hoarse. "Yours, yours, yours." She released his neck slowly, licking the wound by instinct and choice. The mate mark rose beneath his skin like a twin crescent answering hers. The pulse hit them both at once. They dropped to their knees fully, foreheads colliding, breathless and laughing through tears as the completed bond settled. No longer lightning strikes and chaos, but a deep, steady river under everything. Stormborn cupped her face, thumbs catching at tears she hadn't noticed falling. "I felt it lock." "So did I." She pressed her brow to his. "No chains." "No chains," he echoed. She kissed him then, slow and certain, tasting blood and moonlight. When they finally parted, she rested her palm over his mark, and he covered her hand with his. Against his mouth she whispered, "I kneel for no one." He smiled through tears and answered exactly, "Then stand with me forever." They rose together. The great pack accord convened in the same Moonfall Square where Isadora had once been dragged in chains. This time drums did not celebrate cruelty. They called law. Alphas ringed the central dais under winter sun. Scribes waited with clean ledgers. Common wolves filled every tier, including castouts who had never before been allowed inside a governance hearing. Stormborn stood at one side of the altar in crown and battle scars. Isadora stood at the other in dark silver armor, mate mark visible at her shoulder, daughter in her arms wrapped in storm gray wool. The herald read each reform aloud, and each was sealed not by applause, but by oath. Bride rejection without tribunal review is hereby criminal assault. A rumble of shock. Then slowly, nods. Any pregnant wolf cast out without due hearing receives immediate asylum rights under Crown protection. Howls from the lower tiers. Women, elders, rogues, made citizens again. Winter stores will be redistributed by need index, not alliance rank. Hoarding during active famine constitutes treason. Even dissenters stayed silent at that one. When it came time for the Crown Declaration, Stormborn did not place anything on Isadora's head. He handed her the king's seal ring in front of everyone. By charter ratified this day, he said, voice carrying. Isadora Shadowfang Stormborn is High Luna and co-ruler. Equal authority to the crown in justice courts, maternal clinics, and border diplomacy. Her seal is law beside mine. Isadora slid the ring onto her finger. Then, let the first orders stand. No wolf in these lands begs for exile under threat again. Sealed, the scribes chorused. Rurik grinned openly in the front rank, arm in a sling from the arena fight. Maeve held the baby when Isadora needed both hands for signatures. The Frostback elder who had reached for Isadora's throat months earlier stood with his broken wrist still stiff and swore compliance under gaze of half the square. At the final clause, the herald lifted the child for all to see. Heir acknowledgement under new charter, daughter of Isadora and Xavier Stormborn, protected by crown and pack. The square knelt, not to one ruler but to the future they had nearly destroyed. Weeks later, the training yard rang with wood striking wood. Isadora paced the line of young she-wolves, some noble, some former castouts, one limping rogue girl who grinned like trouble. Again, Isadora barked, lower center. If you can't hold your base, you can't hold your life. They moved, stumbled, corrected. She adjusted grips, shoved shoulders into better alignment, praised clean hits, punished laziness with extra laps. At the rail, Stormborn watched with their daughter strapped to his chest in a fur sling, tiny fist wrapped around the edge of his collar. Every time Isadora demonstrated a disarm, the baby kicked like she approved violence in principle. Rurik leaned beside the king. She terrifies them. Stormborn's smile was pure pride. Good. Isadora glanced over, caught his eye, and felt the settled bond hum, steady as breath, fierce as oath. No spectacle now. Just shared work, shared power, shared future. She blew the whistle for break. The girls scattered to water barrels, laughing. Stormborn crossed the yard and handed her a skin. High Luna, he said formally. She arched a brow. Common soldier. He laughed, then kissed her. Quick, warm, familiar. Around them, the yard kept moving. Wolves training, children shouting, hammers on distant walls repairing what war had broken. Peace, held not by silence, but by strength shared. And this time, no one forced her to kneel.